this room. My healer, redeemer, strong tower, my everything, defender, waymaker, my savior, my everything. Say, my redeemer, my strong tower. Say, he's my everything. He's my defender. Hey, you are God. Say, my everything. Say, my healer. You are. You're a strong tower. You're my defender. You're the God that makes ways. Hey, say, my healer, redeemer, strong tower, declare it, defender, you're my way maker, hey, my savior, my everything. Somebody lift up your hands all over this room and declare it. Say, my everything. You are, you are, you are, you're my everything. You're all I need. You're all we need.
Good morning and welcome to Lifetalks. I feel like I'm echoing. Echo. Am I echoing?
You are.
No?
No,
Yes? Okay. All right. Well, we are so very glad that you're all here today. Our
Are you in the? Is she in the house? Is she in the house?
Am I in the house? Does it sound funny to you? Sounds better? Okay, I'm gonna try. You know how you talk on your phone? You know how you talk on your phone and it like goes like you hear yourself talking?
There you go. There you
Is that better?
There you go.
Okay.
There you
It's
go.
very weird. There's like a delay. It's okay.
Not no mo.
Okay, well, welcome. We're so glad you're here today to Life Talks. And we are going to talk about movements and church growth and all those wonderful things. Our theme today is the organic dynamic of the kingdom.
Hey, you know what it feels like? Okay. You know what it feels like? It literally is what it's like when you preach a big conference. It's what it sounds like, yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Okay. All right, so here's the intro today.
There
Thank
you go.
you. Today we're talking about how God's kingdom grows, not just through what happens in the church, but through the life that flows from it. Growth and movement aren't competing ideas. They're both a part of God's design. The Spirit gives life, and structure gives it space to grow.
True.
When these stay in rhythm, we have what we call a healthy multiplying ecosystem. Okay, does that make sense? A healthy multiplying ecosystem. Our scriptures today are Mark chapter 4, verse 26 through 29. The seed sprouts and grows. The earth yields the crop by itself. Acts chapter 6, verse 7. The word of God spread, and the number of disciples multiplied greatly.
Yeah.
So let's open with a question. As you see today, it's just the two of us. So I'm going to ask the questions and he's going to give the answers. That sound good? Is that a deal?
I'm going to make comments. I'm not sure if I'm going to give answers.
Okay. I'm going to give a question and you give a comment. Here's our opening question.
But we need help from the crowd.
But we need help from the crowd and anyone watching online. So Lifetalks at thelifewaychurch.net. Lifetalks at thelifewaychurch.net. You can text or you can email and we will receive those comments or questions. When you hear the words church growth and movement, what comes to your mind? And I'll ask both of these. How do you see them working together rather than apart from each other? Church growth and movement.
Okay, so church growth to me is, I would say, predominantly so in its purest form, I would say that church growth is the net result of missional overflow. in its purest sense, in the positive context, in the most positive context, it's church growth is what happens when we see that in the book of Acts the church grew, right? It's synonymous. Church growth is synonymous with the advancement of the gospel, that like Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. That in the purest sense of the word, I think you would say that church growth is that. In its somewhat corrupted form, it is trying to create systems and programs so that we would expand the Sunday attendance. So now the crazy thing about it is, though, it's kind of like one of these, it's like a circular argument, though, because you're like, yeah, but you just said church growth, right? It could be either good or bad. And I think that if church growth and movement serve or the result of the same kind of thing, and which is, I would say, probably predominantly organicness is the key, then I would say that probably, God designed his kingdom to grow naturally. So when the right conditions, I guess this is be a way where you'd say, how do you synthesize this? When the right conditions are present, right? So like there's certain plants that we had that they were just fine, but they were in pots on the deck. And in the summertime, the pot gets really hot, the deck gets really hot, and I think like it transfers a lot of that heat toward the roots, and the plants didn't do well. And the soil was perfect. I mean, we went and bought the best kind of soil. Like we bought the Miracle Grow, it's called Miracle Grow. Hello.
It was not much of a miracle.
No, there was no miracle in it. But what the thing was that we were trying to create like a self-contained potted environment where these plants were like, oh, this is going to be great. The animals aren't going to be able to get to them except the chipmunks. But we need Brother Renzel could help us with that. And so the chipmunks did get to some of them, which was probably pretty funny because this year we grew those pear tomatoes. We've never grown those before. They're like pear tomatoes. And every now and then I go to pick some and you'd see two little tooth marks in them. They apparently didn't like them. Because they
thought they did,
yeah,
and then they would taste them and be like,
I thought this was something different. But anyway, so we would grow them, right? We grew them on our deck, but they didn't really flourish. And I think that church growth in its corrupted form is kind of like that. You think that like, oh, it's going to be perfect because everything here is going to be situated to just like we're going to do this. And it's going to grow the church. But yet, what we find in the book of Acts is that Jesus situated church growth on the individuals. He invested it into the lives of the disciples who invested it. And we know that this is a New Testament principle because Paul tells Timothy, commit these things to faithful men who commit them to faithful men. And so we find this kind of, it's situated on people. And when it's situated on people, then it's not contained to a building. Then it's not contained to one address. Then it's not contained to one day a week. This is where we start saying, why do most churches spend 80% of their missional resources, or 80% of the resources on 1/7 of the week? Most churches focus the mission on Sunday. But the reality is that what would happen if we had a movement? A movement would be that individuals know how to connect with people. They know how to have conversations with people. They know how to identify disciplable people and how to cultivate that so that all of a sudden everything and everywhere becomes a platform for the mission to happen, which is, I think, what we see the Jesus movement being.
Right, and I think we've gotten lazy because it's so easy for people to say, so why we make Sundays what they are? Is it we've gotten lazy and we say, let's just invite them to come. And then it's the church's responsibility to take care of them. And you're saying, no, it's your responsibility every day of the week, right? So it's not just that. So how do you see healthy growth and spirit-led movement working together in the local church?
Well, okay, so I think a good way to look at this to me would be to look at like a greenhouse. So a greenhouse, a true greenhouse, is not intended to be the place that the plants ultimately grow. If you look at a greenhouse, like right now, there's probably greenhouses all over, I don't know, wherever they grow them. Mexico, I think, is mostly poinsettias, right? And those greenhouses are growing those, but they're not. It's not for them to just grow inside the greenhouse. It's for them to go and sit on tables and stuff like that. And unfortunately, a poinsettia you can't really plant it. But think about plants that you go buy. Hardly anybody buys seeds anymore. Rarely. People don't much buy seeds anymore when they're planting a garden. A lot of times they go and just buy those little flats of peppers and whatever, and then bring that home because it's already pre-emerged and it's already started. And so I think if you think about a church in its best context, I think a church is kind of like, if you think about how does it work sort of in unison and serving each other. I think the church in its corporate context is building each other up in the most holy faith. That the Bible talks about the strength, the nourishment that each joint supplies to the building up or the edifying of itself in love. And so the church is like the purest form, where we get together and like we speak life to one another, like we don't, maybe hear anywhere else. Very rare will we hear what we hear here. And I think that's kind of like a greenhouse. But what we have to understand is that that's to get the plant healthy and emerged so that it can be planted out there. And so if we could think of it that way, is that there's nobody here that could have a walk with God in this room. There's nobody here that would have a walk with God that's just self-contained to here. We're called to bear fruit, and the fruit of the Spirit, right? You talked about this, was it last week? You said there's no fruit trees, vegetables, whatever. None of them provide fruit for themselves. The only thing that you could say is like self-perpetuation, right? But it doesn't use it as nourishment. There's no fruit for it. All fruit is for something else. It's for someone, something else. So what happens is if we can begin to realize that what's cultivated here, what's grown here, what's strengthened here, is then so that the fruit of our life could be out there, so that people could experience the fruit of the Spirit and say, I need what you've got.
Right, which the next question says, what happens when what God grows in the greenhouse starts taking root in the real environment, our neighborhoods, our workplaces, our homes?
Yeah. So we don't have to create them as competing things. Just like the home that you live in and the place that you work, unless you're like a farmer, but the home that you live in and the place that you work are usually two completely separate addresses. You know what I'm saying? Unless you're a business owner and your business is right there on your property, or you're a farmer. But for the most part, most people work somewhere other than where they live. Well, those two things aren't in competition with each other. It's, you go home to eat and relax and sleep and whatever, so that you can get up and spend another day making money. So I think that if you think of these things not in a competing way, I think in its corrupted form, I think church growth in its corrupted form competes against God's best method. but in its pure form, if we can really understand and capture that. And so I think, like today, I think our real goal is to say, how do we capture organic movement is the thing.
So the organic dynamic of the kingdom, let's talk about that. Movements happen when disciples live out the life of Jesus in their everyday world. The power of the early church wasn't found in its size, but in its shared life, right? So I'll have you comment a little bit on that before we move on.
Well, so the word organic probably is a little cliche, or yeah, I mean everything's organic now. I mean everything becomes organic until nothing is, or whatever. I don't know, but in its purest form, I think the word, when we're talking about organic, I think we're talking about something that is natural, that it is self-sustained, it's non-GMO. Like what would happen if we could have a non-GMO revival? I think that's the hard thing. I believe that the mission in 2025 in most North American churches is a GMO version. It's a genetically modified, adapted organism that has been sort of like a blurred, co-opted thing. I think organic is the priesthood of the believers.
My mind just did what his does sometimes. What's the stuff they put in Chinese food? That's why that guy was so confused. I called and ordered Chinese food.
No,
and
you
I
did not say GMO.
Did
you say it?
It just dawned on me when you said that, because I said, we want an order of General Tso's with no GMO. And I meant MSG, and he said, no what? And I said, no GMO. He's like, okay. And then I got a call back about 3 minutes later, and he must have realized. He said, you ever eat our food before? I said, yes, we eat there all the time. And he said, okay. And then he said, well, there's a little bit in the sauce. And so he realized what I meant. Oh, man, that just dawned on me why he was so. And I'm like, I can't believe this guy doesn't even know what MSG is. But I said GMO.
When the Chinese guy can make the translation.
That is so good. That's a kick.
I'm glad you did that and felt that experience.
I just felt your brain.
Thank you.
Wow.
It's
Man,
strange.
how do you get back on after you do that? I'm just laughing. This poor guy. Guys, go support Lens. They're an amazing place to eat, and that's where it was. He figured it out. Okay.
So
where was I?
Okay.
How do you go back?
This is why I'm a mind mapper. This is why, because I got like 5 bubbles that float in my head at all times, and I just shift them around.
5 bubbles.
So like a GMO. What would be a genetically modified organism? I think genetically modified is when you sort of change it from its purest organic form. Like for example, we bought the turkey red hard wheat to mill ourselves, and it is non-GMO. They said this would be what what bread would be like if you ate bread in the 1800s. Like it's heirloom, it's not manipulated in any way. And so like I think with bread is a good example. Okay? So bread, what they do with bread is they remove the wheat germ and the bran from the bread so that it is more shelf stable and it'll last longer, and it doesn't
takes
break
away
down
all the
mold,
nutrients.
right? But it takes away the nutrients. In fact, it's pretty interesting. This is another little bubble, but it's attached to the bigger bubble. So we had some testing that was done recently. My wife and I are doing a lot of health testing and so on, just trying to stay on top of things. And anyway, she found out that this might be a HIPAA thing. Do you want me to share? Do you care if I share?
You can share whatever you want.
Okay, all right. So there's a genetic, there's a lot of people actually have some form of this genetic flaw, which is a
Do we have to call it a flaw? Can we call it something else?
yeah, have this genetic uniqueness.
Thank you.
That is, it is methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase.
MTHFR. That's the
It's
code.
So it's on the chain of your DNA, and there's like A 1187 is one location, and then C667 is another location, and she's got the genetic mutation on both spots, which means she is what they call homozygous for that mutation, which means that her body can only process about 33% of folates, which would be like your B6, your B12. All right, so I'm heterozygous, which means I've only got the one, and I have the one that's the least of the two. So what that means is that she would be prone to anemia. The reason why this is important, okay, in our discussion today is because when they take the wheat germ and the bran out of the bread, they're taking the nutrients out to make it shelf stable, and they add folic acid back in. But 80% of people cannot digest folic acid in that form. And so there's a lot of doctors out there, nutritionists, that are kind of saying, all this stuff that, has kind of become sort of pop nutrition, like gluten intolerance, is they're saying that there are some people that are gluten intolerant, but the reality is probably the majority of people aren't gluten intolerant. They just can't digest the folate or the folic acid. So it's a really, really interesting thing if you want to take go into the rabbit hole. Anyway, I think this is important, though, because of the fact that they have first genetically modified the wheat, then they remove the bran and the wheat germ from breads, which is why people tell you don't eat bread, carbs and so on and so forth. But bread in its actual form, anyway, what happens? You have to modify it to put its nutrition back in. You've got to do something artificially to substitute what you've removed. Right. And then our bodies aren't made to actually work with that. Right. And so it doesn't become the bread of life, it becomes the bread of gut issues. And so okay, how would this connect to like church growth? Well, the modified form of church growth is removing the priesthood of believer component. Right? The modified form is removing what made the New Testament church powerful, which was individual believers had both the power and the responsibility to take this thing where they were every single day, where they lived, where they everywhere, and that they felt empowered, and that they felt. But what has happened, I believe, is that in its corrupted form, it's some of that has been GMO'd. Yes. And then people are like, well, we need the next big evangelistic push, and I'll get involved. Or we need the next big evangelistic push, and I'll volunteer. And I think that what happens is the Holy Ghost doesn't work in us that way. A lot of churches say, well, if we can get the 5, 6, 7 most talented people in a room and most creative people, and get those creative people together, and they're going to think about some ways that we're going to get this year. We're going to have 1 per quarter, 4 strategies of reaching our community, and then hoping that people get involved, and then essentially it's invite people to this, and then just let the church do the rest. That is a GMO version of God's New Testament missional plan. Okay? Now, but here's the thing. But it doesn't mean, just like the GMO, okay, just like what we've done, okay, so what we've done is we bought a flour mill, a grain mill. We bought a grain mill where we buy heirloom organic wheat berries and literally make our own flour that has the wheat germ and whatever. And because of this, it reduces the hypoglycemic response, and bread all of a sudden isn't bad for you like the store-bought shelf-stable kind, okay? This is not an ad for natural nutrition living.
Although we do want everybody to be healthy.
No, we do want everybody to be healthy. But I think that, but the point is this, it's not that bread isn't healthy, and it's not that you can't eat bread. It's that your particular interesting, unique thing makes it difficult for you to digest bread in its GMO industrialized version. Bring it back down to the organic form, and you do just fine with it. I believe that if the church could return to being an organic flour mill, if the church could go back and say, let's recapture the organic and let the institutional church, rather than the institutional church be, so rather than these things competing, the institutional church says, we'll be the mill, we'll be the greenhouse, we'll help grow it until it's strong enough to survive anywhere. We'll help you go back to the organic so that you can feel anointed and appointed and empowered to do the work that God's called you to do. And in that, both are working together synergistically.
Absolutely. And healthier churches, happier people, on mission.
Not bloated churches.
Absolutely.
Yeah, churches with gut issues.
For real. Absolutely.
I mean, it's so
I
true.
know. It's so good. So I'm going to end with these 2 key points, and then we're going to stop because it's 10:30, and we'll go on with this later.
Let me do something really crazy right here. Can I? Just real crazy.
Go for it.
Okay. There's a thing called myelin, M-Y-E-L-I-N, myelin. Neuroscientists have found that myelin is a chemical, okay. Myelin is a chemical that is produced by your hormones when you're faced with a situation wherein you're unfamiliar or you're afraid or uncertain. And your body produces it, okay? Watch. And the myelin wraps around your neural pathway to reinforce what you're learning in that unique moment. In other words, your brain understands, wow, I'm in a unique time here, or I've never faced this, or I'm a little anxious about this. Your body starts producing myelin. Go read the book Culture Code. But there's this really important thing that I think is that we need to capture here, and that is like preaching. Okay? So the information that you're given in a comfortable setting, the information that you're given when you feel like, yeah, I know, right? You can't teach somebody something new when they think they know everything. Okay? So what neuroscientists are learning is that you have to literally get people to a place that they're experiencing things that are unfamiliar and uncommon and sometimes scary for them to say, wait, hold on. And then their body starts producing myelin, and then now the information and the new neural pathways, this is what happened and this is what worked and this is what, okay, are actually wrapped with myelin, and myelin is literally like an insulator that reinforces that neurotransmitter, and it reinforces that learning place in your brain. Why is this important? Because most churches, we come together and sermons are basically for our own personal good and growth. And you hear it and you're like, that's pretty good. But then you file it away. Well, what pastor preached 2 weeks ago? No clue. It's like a supper. I don't remember what I ate 2 weeks ago. I mean, I could probably go back and think about it. But what happens is Jesus sends the disciples in Luke chapter 10 and says, go out, take no purse, don't take a change of clothes, don't take any money, and where are we going to live? The Lord will make a way. What are we going to eat? The Lord's going to make a way. And you're like, what was Jesus doing? Jesus was literally putting them in a missional context to cause them to begin to understand the things that he'd been teaching them so that they could actually acclimate those things in their life. I think that people who are not activating, people who are not living it out, people who are not church people, who are not daily living out the Word of God, sermons just kind of go in there and they're like, yeah, I know all that stuff. And it's just filed away or whatever. And the brain just does that because our brain is geared for optimum efficiency, right? So Jesus uses liminality. He uses liminal moments to take us through. So now what happens is Jesus has to allow certain enemies and certain things come in our life, and certain things threaten us, and he employs an enemy. Why? Because no trial for the moment seemeth joyous, but afterward it yields the peaceable fruit to them that are exercised thereby. And so what happens is sometimes there's enemies and there's things that come into our life so that we don't get so comfortable that we just simply comfort ourselves into lukewarmness. And all of that would be fixed if the people of God were living daily on mission.
Which this says, Acts chapter 8, verse 4 says, those who were scattered went everywhere preaching the word.
Scattered by persecution.
Had to be scattered. Because they just get in there and just kind of come to church, sit and listen and go.
Raymond Woodward's sermon.
Yeah.
It was, Jerusalem 2.0 or Acts 2.0, whatever it was. And what Raymond Woodward literally preached the sermon, one of the best sermons I've ever heard in my life. So and he preached that Jerusalem did not become the sending center of the New Testament church because 15 years after Pentecost, and all the apostles were still in Jerusalem. And so God raises up a Saul to bring persecution against the church. And they scattered, and those same scattered people, what was that, Acts
8:4.
8. Those same people that were scattered, do you know where they ended up? Antioch. And Antioch became the sending center of the New Testament church. Jerusalem was destroyed. 70 AD, Jerusalem was destroyed. 37 years after the death of Jesus. And Jerusalem was destroyed by Antiochus Epiphanes. The walls of the city came down. Jerusalem, where the Holy Ghost fell, Jerusalem, the holy city, was destroyed, and Antioch became the sending center. Why? Because the apostles, we turn locations into Meccas.
Yeah. Yes.
And they stayed there in Jerusalem, and even the apostles were there, gathered in Jerusalem. Saul gets his great revelation and has to come to Jerusalem. Right. I mean, look at the pattern. Saul has to come to Jerusalem to appear before the church council to share what God has revealed to him, right, in Syria. They don't know what to do with him. They send him back to his home, and Barnabas goes to get him, and Barnabas says, here, come with me. And Barnabas takes him to the place where the people were, the church that had been birthed out of his persecution. And Barnabas brings Saul to Antioch, and he stays there for the space of 2 to 3 years, and he's teaching the people, and then the Holy Ghost said, separate unto me Barnabas and Saul for the work where I've called, and Antioch becomes the sending center. It's not unique to us.
It is not unique to us. And it's funny because I was just thinking while you were talking about songs back through the years, all the way back in the 80s, Lanny Wolf, Stirred But Not Changed. And all these people trying to, I don't even think they understood what was happening, but people were getting lazy and people were just kind of sitting and not going and not.
Yeah.
It's happened, like you said, all the way back.
Can I be a little more gracious with that?
Yeah.
Just, I wonder, so I kind of feel like in some ways, one of the reasons why the Apostolic Church has become a cloistered community is because you go back to that era in the 70s, 80s, whatever. That was sort of almost the pre-charismatic era. Once the charismatic movement hit, people started speaking in tongues, and there was TBN, and people saw it, and it was like it wasn't weird anymore. But there was a day when if you're a Pentecostal and you had like a tent revival or whatever, people could come and throw eggs at you. They could, we've heard all the stories of they'd come in and throw eggs. They try to destroy the tent in the middle of the night, whatever. I think that there is a little bit of something to be said that there's like, this is our safe place. And somewhere along the way, our restorationist impulse gave way to, man, it just feels good to come together with the people that believe like me and look like me, and value what I value. And I think there's going to come a day, though, where less and less of that, you can't go anywhere. And now what's going to happen is that the church is going to have to capture and say, okay, now I know what Jesus meant when he said, they hated me, they're going to hate you. You'll be hated of all nations for my name's sake. You're not going to be able to have a modern attractional church growth model if everybody hates you.
It's true.
Nobody's just going to show up at the church because they're like, this is the coolest church ever. But what'll happen is that, but you can have a relationship and you can connect with people and you can,
yes.
and God's drawing on people, and there'll be people saying, I've been looking for somebody like you. I've been looking for what you've got.
Right.
And those kind of connections are going to happen, probably less and less under the roof and more as the people go out.
So good. So good. This was very good today. All right, well, go be a witness. Go get a relationship with someone. Start telling them about Jesus. Brittany was telling us yesterday about someone that she came in contact with and just shared Jesus, and wow, the transformation is beginning in that life, and I won't even go there yet, but I think that testimony will be able to be shared eventually, and just by sharing Jesus with people. And when you're excited about what you have and who you are, it's going to flow out of you, and you're going to share it easily you're going to share it because it's who you are and it's what you believe, and you want everyone to have it. So I love that. All right, it is 10:39. We've got time for some coffee and a donut out there. So somebody, and I'll say this like this just because I don't want it on the mic, but somebody brought Charlie Kirk. I still want to say it in the mic because I don't want to cause a bunch of issues online. So that's there. And also there's information about Grief Share and all the things out in the foyer. So make sure you go check all that out. And we will see you back here at 11 o'clock.